We are learning now that that public hearing that was slated for Wednesday, where we were supposed to hear from former FBI Director James Comey, has now been postponed, and that's coming from the chairman of the Oversight Committee in the House, Jason Chaffetz. So let's go right ahead to Ed O'Keefe, Washington Post political reporter, to learn a little bit more about that. Ed, what do you know?
Hey, guys. Basically, Chaffetz, as he is wont to do, announced via Twitter that there will not be a hearing on Wednesday, saying that he spoke apparently with the former FBI director today by phone, and that Comey wants to consult with Robert Mueller, the special counsel, before determining how to proceed on other congressional testimony. That is also apparently the message he has conveyed today to the Senate Intelligence Committee, that while he still plans to meet with them at some point after Memorial Day, he will do so only after consulting the special counsel and his team. It shouldn't be much of a surprise, frankly, that Comey is not testifying this week. Chaffetz, quite frankly, has a tendency to announce things first and sort out the details later. That has been the sort of MO of his publicity seeking tenure here in Congress. It's no secret he's media savvy. It's no secret that he has used his perch as chairman of the Oversight Committee to jump on the headlines and say that his committee is doing something, when in reality later it may not be doing as much as he initially advertised. We know that last week he emerged pretty prominently to talk to reporters and say that his committee was going to look into this and announce the date for a hearing, but admitted that he hadn't actually talked to Comey about it, and now, no surprise, is backing off. And remember, Chaffetz is actually preparing to step down from Congress next month. This may hasten his departure and certainly may hasten the calls among his Republican colleagues to relinquish his chairmanship, because if he can't oversee this as he prepares to leave, perhaps somebody more serious and more focused on actual congressional work and not on getting a new job should be running this investigation.
Yeah, and you know, Ed, of course we're not in the business of making assumptions here, but whenever you hear something of this, of course, with all of the revelations that have been taking place within the recent weeks, you think something has to be going on. There must be something big, especially with Chaffetz announcing that he's going to be leaving pretty soon. What do you make of that and the timing?
Are you talking about Chaffetz's decision to leave or Comey's decision not to testify?
Chaffetz's decision to leave and also Comey's decision not to testify right now. Both.
Well, let's start with Comey, because we know that he faces now the reality of a special investigation by Robert Mueller, and there may be some legal hoops he has to jump through regarding what he can and cannot say publicly to Congress, and what he has to sort of first discuss with investigators, now part of this probe run by Mueller.
But you think when he announced last week that he was going to testify, you would have thought that he would have dotted his I's and crossed his T's and met with the proper people before saying, okay, yes, I agreed to testify. So why now?
Well, and I think what's important to note is that in that announcement that the Intelligence Committee made, they didn't set a firm date. All they said is that it was going to happen after Memorial Day. So what probably happened there is that by now, Comey has an understanding that he can do this. But first he has to meet with Mueller, then he can set a date with the Intelligence Committee and probably with other congressional committees and come to Capitol Hill and testify publicly. We know Comey has said he wants to do it publicly. He wants to tell his side of the story to the American public. Lawmakers certainly want him to. I should think those of us in the press want to hear his story as well, frankly. But obviously he has to lawyer up and consult first. As for Chaffetz, everyone up here has been scratching their heads about this, DeMarco, because he had announced, or he had floated the theory that he was going to be leaving. He had been a very inactive oversight chairman, despite vows to look into activities by the Trump administration. But it's no surprise that a member of the Republican Party wouldn't push as aggressively as they had during the Obama years. And then suddenly, after sort of being dormant for a few weeks, announces that he's going to look into the Comey matter and has already set a date without actually checking with the main witness. So everything about Chaffetz right now is a little head scratcher, and I think at this point we know there are colleagues who are saying, best if you get out of the way. Let's pick a new chairman for this Oversight Committee and move on. Remember, the Oversight Committee in the House has very broad powers of investigation. It is by virtue the one that can look into anything in the federal government, at least on the House side. But the main committees of jurisdiction for the FBI, where Comey worked, are the judiciary panels in the House and the Senate. Neither of them, at least so far, has announced plans to meet with Comey. Comey has only so far confirmed that he will eventually testify to the Intelligence Committee, which doesn't have direct oversight of the FBI, but I think that speaks to the fact that so much of the FBI's work now is done in the counterintelligence realm, not just in general law and order issues.
Ed, do you think it's possible that after Comey meets with Bob Mueller that he may actually change his decision and we might not hear from him in a public hearing at all?
Erica, that's a very good question, because we've been asking that, wondering whether or not that would happen. As soon as Mueller was announced as the special counsel, one of the first questions we started asking lawmakers was, well, does this mean you can even investigate anything? Or is everyone going to climb up now, claim that their lawyers are telling them they can only talk to the special investigator and you can't carry out your work? What Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, who was Bob Mueller's boss now, told Congress last week was that, no, the investigations run by Congress can continue, should continue. But inevitably, some witness along the way, whether it's Jim Comey or somebody else, is going to step in and say, you know what, I can't discuss this because my lawyer's telling me that it makes more sense for me to just talk to Bob Mueller and his team. We saw today Michael Flynn, the former National Security Advisor, tell the Intelligence Committee, for example, he's invoking his Fifth Amendment right of self-incrimination. He may do that to Bob Mueller as well. And that may be that because this investigation is now ongoing, he feels it's better to just say nothing than to say anything.
And that's just to be safe than sorry, of course, just erring on the side of precaution and not jeopardizing this investigation.
Right, exactly.
All right, Ed O'Keefe on the phone for us. Thank you, Ed. Always good to talk to you.
Take care.